On my 72nd birthday, I opened a sealed envelope I'd hidden for 53 years, and what fell out could have ruined our whole town. Rain is tapping at my window like it's asking permission to come in. The house is quiet, the kind of quiet you only get when you've outlived most of the people who once said your name. I'm sitting on the edge of my bed with a shoebox of photographs and a heart that won't stop thudding. Do you know the feeling of being afraid of your own memories? My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm a grandmother now, gray hair, soft hands, a kettle that whistles too loud, but I'm also still the girl who learned, the hard way, that the loudest men in church aren't always the safest. If you're listening, stay with me. Because the moment I tell you why I was sent away, you'll understand why I waited until my hands shook with age before I dared to speak. And you'll understand what my sister did when everyone else looked away. I grew up in a 2-room house outside a little place called Alder Hollow, Arkansas. We didn't have much, thin blankets, patched clothes, cornbread stretched one more night, but my mama could make a table feel like a feast just by humming while she worked. My father was a different kind of song. Heavy boots. Heavy voice. Heavy silence after. He liked to say he was a righteous man, and he used that word the way some folks use a hammer. When he was pleased, the house could breathe. When he wasn't, we held our breath until our lungs burned. I had 2 brothers and a baby sister, Marjorie, who followed me like a shadow with pigtails. I used to tell her stories at night, little made-up worlds where girls got to choose their own futures. She'd press her small hand into mine, trusting me like I had answers. What kind of sister would I be if I didn't tell the truth now? In Alder Hollow, church wasn't just church. It was reputation, groceries, jobs, who got forgiven, who got shunned. Father Caldwell, our priest, had a voice that could turn a room cold. Folks leaned toward him like sunflowers, desperate for light. And my father adored him. Not like a man admires another man. Like a man bows. I was 18 when I met Daniel Reed, the pharmacist's son who played guitar at Saturday socials. He had an easy smile, the kind that makes you forget to be guarded. The first time he spoke to me, I felt my face warm, and I hated myself for how quickly I wanted more. Isn't it strange how a single kind word can feel like danger when you've grown up with sharp ones? One summer evening the church held a picnic by the river. Somebody strung lanterns in the trees, and for once the adults laughed without that tightness around their mouths. Daniel asked me to dance. I said yes, because I was young and I wanted to feel normal for 3 minutes. His hand rested at my waist, respectful, steady. I remember thinking, this is what tenderness feels like. That thought alone would cost me everything. Father Caldwell's nephew, Wade, saw us. Wade had the kind of eyes that measured girls like livestock. He didn't say a word to my face. He didn't have to. By Sunday morning, the story had grown claws. Evelyn was careless, Evelyn was tempting, Evelyn was asking for trouble. Have you ever watched a lie become a fact just because people enjoy repeating it? When I came home, my father was waiting at the kitchen table. Mama stood behind him, wringing a dish towel until it looked like rope. My father didn't ask. He announced. I had shamed him. The punishment would clean me. That night I slept with my sister's small body curled against mine, and I stared into the dark, trying to figure out how a dance could turn into a sentence. The next day Father Caldwell came to our house. Not to comfort. To claim. He sipped Mama's coffee like he'd earned it, then said I had a vocation. A calling. A chance to be corrected away from town eyes. My stomach dropped. I wanted to teach school. I wanted a home with curtains I chose myself. I wanted to write my name on something and have it mean freedom. Father Caldwell told my parents about a convent far away, St. Dymphna's house in northern Wyoming, where strong women would shape me into something pure. My father nodded like he'd been offered an award. Mama's eyes filled, but she didn't speak. What could she do when a priest and a husband were standing shoulder to shoulder? I packed one small bag. A plain dress. A cardigan. A little wooden rosary from my grandmother. Marjorie slipped her favorite ribbon into my hand and whispered, "Don't forget me." That ribbon is still in my jewelry drawer today. On the last night, Daniel met me behind the church, near the shed where they kept folding chairs. He held my hand so tightly it hurt. "I'll wait," he promised. "I'll find you." I believed him, because believing was easier than facing the truth. Nobody found girls once the church decided they belonged elsewhere. The trip took days, truck rides, a bus that smelled like diesel, a train where I watched the fields flatten into wide, lonely land. By the time I reached Wyoming, I felt like I'd been peeled away from myself. And then I saw it, St. Dymphna's. High stone walls. Narrow windows. A gate that closed with finality. A tall woman in a severe black veil met me at the entrance. Sister Imelda. Her face was pale and sharp, like it had forgotten how to soften. She didn't smile. She didn't welcome me. She evaluated me. "Obedience is safety," she said, as if it were scripture. Inside, they took my suitcase. Then they took my hair. They cut it close to my scalp, letting the dark strands drop like dead leaves. They washed me in cold water, dressed me in rough fabric, and told me my old name was a temptation. From then on, they called me Sister Eve. Like my whole life could be reduced to a warning. That first night I lay on a thin mattress in a small room with a locked door. The walls held no pictures. The air smelled like soap and stone. I pressed Marjorie's ribbon to my nose and tried not to make a sound as I cried. Would my mother miss me, or would she pretend I'd never existed just to survive my father? Life at St. Dymphna's ran on a bell. 4 a.m, bell. Prayers on knees, bell. Work, bell. Silence, bell. Hunger, bell. The rules were endless, and the punishments were simple: pain, humiliation, isolation. We ate crusts of bread and watery porridge. We scrubbed floors until our hands cracked. We stitched linens for hospitals and altar cloths for churches that would never know the cost. There were girls there younger than my sister. Some had bruises they tried to hide. Some had eyes that looked older than Sister Imelda's. We weren't allowed to talk about home. The world is poison, they told us. Family is distraction. But at night, through the thin walls, I heard muffled sobs. When you forbid people from speaking, you don't remove the pain, you only force it to leak out in the dark. A priest came weekly to hear confessions. Father Rourke. He wore kindness the way my father wore righteousness, as a tool. The first time I knelt behind the screen, I whispered that I missed my mother. That I missed my sister's laugh. I thought confession was private. I thought it was sacred. The next morning Sister Imelda called me into her office and repeated my words back to me with exact precision. My mouth went dry. How did she know? She struck my palms with a wooden ruler until my fingers tingled and went numb. Then she told me to thank her. I did, because I wanted to live. Isn't that what captivity teaches you? Gratitude for your own suffering? That day, a quiet girl named Lena slid a folded scrap of paper into my apron as we carried laundry. It read, "Say less in confession." Lena had been there 3 years. She spoke rarely, but when she did, she watched the corners of the room first. One evening while we sorted sheets in the steam, she leaned close and whispered, "They trade our words like currency." I stared at her, not understanding. Then she added, "And some of us pay in worse ways." About a month later, a storm rolled over the convent. Thunder made the windows rattle. I couldn't sleep, so I listened, really listened. Footsteps in the hall. A door opening softly. I cracked my own door and saw Father Rourke slip into a novice's room while Sister Agnes stood watch with a candle. The novice was a girl named Nora. She didn't come to morning prayer. She didn't come to meals. When I asked where she was, Sister Agnes said, "She's being purified." Lena found me later with my hands shaking. She didn't ask what I saw. She just said, "Now you know." And then, very quietly, "If you speak, they'll call you sinful. If you stay silent, they'll call you obedient. Which word would you choose if both felt like a trap? From then on, I learned to survive the way trapped animals do: stillness, caution, watchfulness. I confessed harmless things: pride, impatience, daydreaming. I kept Daniel's name locked behind my teeth. I kept Marjorie's ribbon hidden under my mattress. And Lena and I began meeting in small stolen moments, behind the pantry door, beside the mop closet, near the choir loft where the dust muffled whispers. We made plans in fragments. We promised each other we wouldn't die there. One afternoon we overheard Sister Imelda speaking with Sister Agnes about an upcoming visit from church officials, men with polished shoes and important titles. "Make sure the problem girls aren't seen," Sister Imelda snapped. "Lock them below until the tour is over." Below. The word hit me like cold water. There was something under the convent. Something they didn't want witnessed. That night Lena's eyes shone with a dangerous kind of hope. "I've heard rumors," she said. "A stairway near the old confessional." Her voice shook, but her spine didn't. "If there's a place they hide people," she added, "there's a place we might find a door." The day before the officials arrived, everyone scrubbed as if heaven itself were coming to inspect the grout. In the chaos, Lena and I were assigned to dust the chapel corners. We worked near the back wall, where shadows gathered even at noon. Lena pointed with her rag. A panel. Nearly invisible. My heart pounded so loudly I thought the saints would hear it. When Sister Agnes stepped away, Lena knelt and slipped a hairpin from her sleeve. Her hands moved with practiced calm. The lock gave a soft click. We froze, listening. Silence. Then the panel swung open to reveal stairs spiraling down into damp darkness. We didn't go then. We couldn't. We would have been caught. But I couldn't stop thinking about what waited beneath our prayers. That night, after the bell and the final forced quiet, Lena met me in the corridor, barefoot to keep the floor from betraying us. She carried a stub of candle stolen from the sacristy. We moved like ghosts toward the chapel. At the hidden panel, Lena whispered, "If we turn back now, we'll turn back forever." The stairs smelled of mold and something sour. At the bottom was a long corridor with wooden doors, more like a jail than a holy place. Lena called out names she'd heard before. A weak sound answered from behind a small barred opening. Inside, a girl sat on a bare mattress. Her face was swollen. Her eyes looked emptied. "They're moving us at dawn," she rasped. "So the visitors don't ask questions." There were others. A pregnant girl who held her belly like it might be taken. Another who rocked back and forth, whispering prayers that sounded like pleading. I felt my throat close. Then, footsteps above us. Someone coming down. Lena pinched out the candle and yanked me behind stacked crates. Sister Agnes descended with a lamp. Behind her came Father Rourke. They spoke casually, like two people discussing weather. "Make sure their faces look improved," he said. "No marks." Sister Agnes replied, "And the new one?" "Sister Eve?" Father Rourke's pause felt like a blade. "She's still holding on to herself," he said. "After the visit, I'll handle it." My stomach dropped so hard I thought I'd be sick. Lena's grip on my wrist was iron. We waited until their light disappeared, then crept back up the stairs, shaking from more than cold. Back in my room, I stared at the ceiling and realized something clearly for the first time. Staying meant being broken on purpose. In the laundry the next day, Lena spoke without moving her lips. "We need help," she murmured. She'd noticed Sister Bernice, an older nun in the kitchen, who sometimes looked at us with grief instead of suspicion. "She's not like them," Lena said. "She cries when she thinks nobody sees." "Would you trust someone wearing the same uniform as your captor?" I didn't want to. But desperation makes its own logic. Lena approached Sister Bernice with a simple question: "Do you believe God wants this?" The older nun's eyes filled instantly. She didn't answer right away. She just whispered, no, and that one word felt like a crack of sunlight. Sister Bernice had keys. She also had courage that had been waiting years for a reason. 3 nights later, she slipped a mild sleeping draught into the sisters' tea, enough to make them heavy with sleep, not enough to harm. She opened the hidden panel. She unlocked the basement doors. She pressed coats into our arms. "Go," she said, voice trembling. "And don't waste the life you steal back." We gathered at the back gate before dawn, me, Lena, and 3 girls from below. A supply driver waited in a covered truck, a man named Mr. Harlan, with calloused hands and eyes that wouldn't look away from our fear. He lifted the tarp and motioned us in among sacks of produce. As the gate creaked open behind us, I held Marjorie's ribbon like a lifeline and silently promised my sister I would return. The road felt endless. Every time the truck slowed, I expected shouting, flashlights, hands grabbing hair. But we reached a bus station in a small town just as sunrise painted the sky thin and pink. Mr. Harlan bought our tickets with money that looked like it cost him something. "My aunt disappeared into a place like that," he said quietly. "They told us she got sick. We never saw proof." He tucked my ticket into my palm and added, "Make it count." We rode south to a city big enough to swallow a secret, St. Louis. At a parish near the station, a tired priest and a sharp-eyed housekeeper fed us hot soup and bread without demanding explanations. The housekeeper studied our posture, our flinches, our hunger, and said, "You girls look hunted." Lena answered honestly, "We are." They found us rooms in a strict but safe boarding house run by an old widow who didn't care where we came from as long as we paid rent on time and kept our hands to ourselves. For the first time in years, I slept on a soft mattress with a door that didn't lock me in. In the morning, I woke and listened. No bell, no footsteps in the hall, no orders. Just my own breathing. We took factory work sewing uniforms. The machines rattled my nerves at first, because the rhythm reminded me of the convent, but the women beside us talked and laughed, and nobody punished them for sounding alive. We saved money. We bought simple dresses that didn't itch. We took night classes at a community center. Lena learned faster than any of us. She had the kind of mind they try to bury. One night she said, "They stole our names. So we'll build new ones." A legal aid attorney listened to our story without smirking. A reporter took notes with shaking hands. More women came forward. The secret didn't stay small. It spread like a candle passed from one trembling person to the next. Silence feeds cruelty, truth starves it. After 3 years away, I returned to Alder Hollow, not to kneel for my father's forgiveness, but to look my past in the face. Daniel was back, older, kinder around the eyes, still working in the pharmacy. When he saw me, he went pale like he'd seen a ghost. He told me my mother had died the year before, worn down by worry and quiet sorrow. I cried for her in the way I never could as a girl, fully, without permission. Daniel listened as I told him everything. When I finished, he didn't offer easy comfort. He said, "Tell me what to do." And for once, I didn't feel alone in the fight. Years passed. Lena became an advocate with a spine made of steel. We opened a small safe home for women who ran from places nobody wanted to believe existed. We called it Ribbon House, after the bit of cloth that reminded me I belonged to someone who loved me gently. Threats came. Letters. Late-night phone calls with breathing on the line. We installed better locks and kept going anyway. What else do you do with survival except spend it? Then a package arrived from a woman in Louisiana, a diary taken decades earlier from a superior's desk, filled with dates, punishments, and names written in ink that didn't care who it destroyed. Our attorney read it and whispered, "This changes everything." The case reopened. The public listened harder. An art exhibit made from survivors' stories drew crowds that couldn't pretend anymore. The church finally agreed to a settlement, money, reforms, and a public distribution of our collected testimonies to libraries so small towns could no longer claim ignorance. It wasn't perfect. Nothing gives you back your 18-year-old self. But it was a crack in a wall that had stood too long. We escaped, but we also returned, with evidence. Daniel moved to the city. We married quietly in a backyard with friends who felt like family. He died years later, and the grief still catches in my throat on ordinary mornings. Lena is still alive, still fierce, still correcting the world one law at a time. Ribbon House has grown into more than one address. And now it's just me, Rain, photographs, and the envelope I kept hidden because I feared who might punish me for telling the truth. But I'm 72. My father is gone. Father Caldwell is long buried. And the girl I was deserves one last act of protection from the woman I became. So I'm telling you. If you've ever been silenced, if you've ever been punished for being young or hopeful or loved, hear me clearly, you are not the shame. They are. Near the end of this video, if my story held your hand even for a moment, please tap like and subscribe to Dust of Old Days, so these old truths don't get buried again. I'm Evelyn Hart. This is what happened. And I'm done whispering.